Three, two, one.
We'd like to welcome you to another edition of Grok Talk, brought to you by New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, granitegrok.com. We are your feared extremist, right-wing, hard-charging, gun-toting, opinionated, outspoken, rabble-rousing, letter-writing, radio microphone stomping conservatives and rational libertarians. So get ready for more news and opinion you could only get from granitegrok.com.
Grok Talk.
All right, well, we're coming to you live, finally, from our Third World Redoubt in the just-got-power-back capital of Concord, New Hampshire. It's been an interesting day. We got in here about 20 minutes after 8. The power went out and didn't come back on until 9:45, so we didn't even start the show until now. We did manage to get some stuff broadcast, and for those of you who were paying attention and patiently waited, we very much appreciate that. So we're going to get right to it. We have a couple of guests we're going to be calling today, the first of whom is Kieran Lalore, who was a high school social studies teacher, served with the U.S. Marines in Operation Iraqi Freedom. He is the founder of Iraq Vets for Congress and the author of This Recruit, a first-hand account of Marine Corps boot camp written while knee-deep in the mayhem of Parris Island. He ran as the Republican New York 19th Congressional District candidate in 2008 and is currently a member of the New York State Assembly representing the 105th District. We'd like to welcome to the program, please, Kieran Lalore. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. Very good. Thank you so much for coming on the show with us.
Hey, Kieran, I got a question right out of the gate. Parris Island, 1st Battalion, 2nd Battalion, 3rd Battalion, which one?
I was in 1st Battalion.
Oh, well.
Oh, well, you mustn't see. I know that you're a 3rd Battalion guy just by saying that, because my brother and my father are 3rd Battalion. All the meatheads out in 3rd Battalion. I know about that.
Yeah, Simplify.
Yes. You were,
that's Rick, by the way.
Yeah, this is Skip Murphy, and thanks for coming on the show. That was Chief Warrant Officer Rick Olson of the U.S. Marine Corps, who served as the armorer at the esteemed Parris Island to which my son went.
Absolutely.
So, Semper Fi, and thank you for your service from a double Blue Star dad.
Outstanding.
All right. Well, we have you on the show to talk about some foreign policy stuff. Obviously, there's a lot been going on recently that has to do with foreign policy, and you were the New York State co-chair for Carly Fiorina, and you wanted to give us a little information about how she differentiates herself from the other candidates. Why don't you first frame your and her opinion about the priorities, and then we'll talk about what she brings to the table that the other candidates don't.
Absolutely. I mean, I think we shouldn't need to be reminded that national security is the first priority of the federal government, but we certainly have been reminded of it in recent days and recent weeks, and that is something that, sometimes we get distracted by social issues and other issues, but let's face it, the federal government exists largely in part to make sure that our country is secure. So that's the number one priority, and I would say 1A is the economy, because the stronger we are economically, the stronger we are in terms of being able to defend ourselves and project our interests around the world.
All right, so your candidate of choice, Carly Fiorina, we've interviewed Carly a couple times. We've had her at a bunch of events. She has made herself very available to this program and to people in this state. What, again, speaking as an advocate for her, what do you think are her priorities?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what I think Carly brings to the table that the other candidates do not is she checks all the key boxes, in my opinion. Number one, she has very serious high-level executive experience. Number two, that experience comes from the private sector. I want someone in there with private sector experience, someone who's been in government their whole life, is of that culture, and it's going to be very hard to shape and fix and drag that culture into reform if you're of that culture. So she did not make her career in the government. I think that is a key thing. She's a movement conservative. She didn't become a conservative for this election because the winds are blowing in the conservative direction. If you look at her life, if you look at her, the causes she's fought for and what she's standing up for now, it's very clear she is a principled conservative, and not everyone in this race can say those things. She also has some key government experience. When the CIA had major problems after 9/11, after not finding WMD in Iraq, they brought in outside people from the private sector to have an external advisory board, and they asked Carly Fiorina to chair that board. we live in an increasingly technological world. One of the reasons that the threat of radical Islam is coming home to the United States is technology. We know that the terrorists, in some cases, are ahead of us in terms of their ability to encrypt their communication. And I like someone from the tech sector to really lead us into the 21st century of national security. And she's independent. She's not doesn't owe favors. She's not part of the machine. She's not from the Beltway. And she speaks her mind. And if you look, even in the last couple of days, she was, if not the first, one of the first high-level people on the national stage to say, I don't think now is the time to disarm law-abiding citizens. She, before the FBI, 24 hours before the FBI said that what happened in San Bernardino was a terrorist attack, Carly Fiorina said on national TV, if it walks like a duck, it looks like a duck, it probably is a duck. It has all the hallmarks of an Islamic terrorist attack. And I like that directness and bluntness. And being good on the issues and having a great resume is outstanding, but you also need a great messenger to carry that message. And she's a great messenger. The reason we know Carly Fiorina's name is because she walked into that debates unknown, and she kicked butt in those early debates with her communication skills, and that is important. You know, the right conservatives get beat all the time because we are not always the best messengers and we're not great communicators. But Carly Fiorina is a great communicator, so she can climb into the arena of ideas and fight the conservative fight, and that is incredibly important to me.
Mike?
So I get that, and she is a great communicator, and she was terrific in the debates. And before one of the debates, Van Jones, of all people, said, Carly Fiorina has a mind so sharp it should be licensed as a weapon, which is terrific. My question to you, Kieran, is what happens in between? Because she's unable to maintain altitude between those debate performances, and that's really sad because I have a very short list of candidates that I like, and she's one of them, and I'm kind of disappointed that she doesn't get more traction in between the debates, and what can the campaign do or what can she do to improve that?
Well, the national polls are just that, national polls. If you look at the polls from 60 days before Iowa, back in, say, 2008, Rudy Giuliani was in first place with about 30%. Fred Thompson was in second place, and I can barely even remember those campaigns. If you go back to 2012, Mitt Romney wasn't leading at this point. Someone else was. Escaping me who was leading at this point, but he wasn't leading at this point either. And, if you look at Carly Fiorina, no one knew who she was until August. So she was a complete unknown. Some pollsters weren't even polling her name until August. And now she's in a 14 or 15 person race. She's in sixth place in a field of governors, in a field of national celebrities, in a field of U.S. senators. So from where she was just a few months ago when she started her campaign to where she is now is good. She's investing in the infrastructure in the key states, boots on the ground. And, sometimes in media you say if it leads, it bleeds. If something is outrageous, it gets a lot of coverage. And Carly Fiorina is a very serious person. She doesn't say anything bombastic or outrageous. She has good ideas. She puts them forth very methodically, which is what you want in a president. But it's not necessarily what you want if you're a cable news producer to grab headlines and drive eyeballs to the TV screen. So she suffers from not being bombastic and saying outrageous things. She suffers from being disciplined and methodical in her approach, which might not be the greatest thing for the polls in December, but I think it will serve her well when people actually go and cast votes in February and March in the primary states.
That's fine. I'd like to see a much smaller debate stage. I think we should have Ted Cruz, Donald Trump, Marco Rubio, Chris Christie for entertainment value, and Carly Fiorina, because they're the top debaters. I think we just junk all the rest, frankly.
Well, that reminds me of one of the key ingredients of the Fiorina campaign. She's 100% right when she says she is Hillary Clinton's worst nightmare, and in your heart of hearts you want to see me debate Hillary Clinton. I would love to see Carly Fiorina dissect and bisect Hillary Clinton on the national stage a week before a national election. And we know it's going to be Hillary. If it's not Hillary, it means that Hillary's been indicted and it's some afterthought candidate that they've thrown in there. So I think it's a good bet it's going to be Hillary. And Carly Fiorina is absolutely Hillary Clinton's worst nightmare. And that's the task. The task isn't to get, the highest plurality of supporters in the national poll in December. The task is winning the election and saving our country from the slow descent and actually ever-quickening descent that we're in right now. And who's the best person to do that? It has to be somebody who can beat Hillary Clinton. We know Carly Fiorina would dismantle Hillary Clinton in a way that no one else could.
Yeah, this is Skip, by the way, and thanks for coming on the show again.
I don't know who's talking. I'm hearing all kinds of different voices.
Yeah,
different
there's
accents.
actually four of us here.
That was Mike, and now it's Skip. Go on, Skip.
Okay.
You mentioned not leading in the polls. Unfortunately, I think this time around, we saw it in the last cycle, we're seeing it again here. The national polls and here in New Hampshire, certainly there's a much renewed interest in those polls because we're seeing them coming out almost every day, every other day. And here in the state of New Hampshire, the first in the nation primary, and certainly out in Iowa with the caucuses, it almost seems like the polling is becoming more important than the primary and the caucus. The polling hasn't quite overcome those two entities yet, but it seems to be on the verge of it. And the media with these polls, and I think the polls are being done mostly for the media's benefit to be able to say who's doing what and when, to be able to say we will determine who this is going to be. Don't you think that when you say that the polling it doesn't matter at this point, I tend to disagree that it's as lowered as what you think, because it really is determining who gets on the stage, for at least at the very least, and who's getting the media buzz. And I think Steve, the point is still a valid one. She does well in the poll on the debates. The polls go up. After the debate, they fall. And I'm going to ask again: what is this plan to get up there and stay up there? Because pretty soon the field's going to get winnowed, and if she stays at where she's at, she's going to get winnowed as well.
Yeah. Well, if you look at Trump, he has a little less than 1/3. No matter what poll you look at, he's a little bit below 1/3 of the vote, which means 2/3 of the vote is divided among 13 or 14 other candidates. All of those candidates, many of those candidates will drop out after Iowa and New Hampshire because of a poor showing, and their support, whether it's 3% or 4% or 5%, has to go somewhere. So that's going to happen. And the other thing I'll say with the polls is you have to look at the devil in the details. Sometimes they're just polling any Republicans in the state or nationally, and they're not necessarily a likely Republican primary voter, and that's the key. Who turns out is what determines an election. And I know for running for office and winning a primary, I didn't care about every Republican in my district. I identified the Republicans who were likely to turn out in the primary election, and that's what I focused on. So if the poll is not of likely Republican primary voters, it really has very little credibility. And what the Fiorina people are doing is, and what they've invested in, is infrastructure in the key states, developing lists of supporters who they can turn out come primary day. And that is the key, who you can turn out, identifying them and then turning them out on the day of the election. And that's something the national poll is never going to reflect.
Kieran, we're going to take a quick break. Stay on the line. We'll come back and have some more conversation. Stay tuned. This is Grok Talk.
Rock.